Welcome back, dear viewers. You're still watching Nile Cruise here on Nile TV International with Rana Al-Assas and myself, Mohammed Abdurrahim, and we are coming to you way from the Nile River banks here in Giza. Dear viewers, for almost 30 centuries, from its unification around the year 3100 BC to its conquest by Alexander the Great in the year 332 BC, ancient Egypt was the preeminent civilization in the Mediterranean world, across the world, really, the entire world. From the great pyramids of the Old Kingdom through the military conquest of the New Kingdom, Egypt's majesty has long entranced archaeologists and historians and created a vibrant field of study called, of course, Egyptology, a field of study by its own. Dear viewers, no better to discuss with us a glimpse of Egypt's great civilization than Dr. Mahmoud Halwagy, the former director of the Egyptian Museum. Thank you very much, Dr. Halwagy, for joining us. And
Thank
let
you.
me say happy birthday, because I understand that May the 18th, which came very recently, is International Museum Day. So it must be a birthday for you.
And it's a birthday
As
for
the
you, Muhammad, as well. Huh? Happy birthday. 18th of May is your birthday.
That is correct.
Happy
It's just a
birthday, Muhammad.
coincidence. Yeah. But
Dr.
of course, I meant that the International
No,
Museum Day,
it's
that's
a
what I meant.
coincidence, but
Yeah.
it's your birthday, and happy
Thank you.
birthday, Muhammad.
Thank,
And we always wish you a wonderful birthday,
thank you,
Muhammad.
Rana. Thank you.
And a wonderful year ahead. Mr. Muhammad, a very good day, and it's a pleasure to have you with us in today's episode of Nile Cruise. And at the beginning of today's episode, I'd like to ask you about the initiative that was launched under the auspices entitled We Narrate Our History. Why did you feel there a need to tell our history to younger generations of Egypt or here in Egypt, to learn more about Egypt, of course, but what else do you have to tell us?
In fact, it is a very important and essential topic to launch such initiative uh, by the young generation, directed to the young generation. I mean that to teach the young generation more about the ancient Egyptian history, ancient Egyptian civilization, to show the new generation how was uh, the ancient Egyptian civilization passed by different eras, and how were the ancient Egyptians were interested and were, exerted their utmost to establish and to erect such a great, very great civilization, one of the oldest human civilizations all over the world. So it's very important to have to get this young generation and to teach them and to learn, to let them learn more about ancient Egypt. This will get them to be aware of their civilization, and to be alert, and to be to encourage them to care about their civilization, to protect their civilization, to keep the civilization for the coming generation. If they know the history and civilization and they be aware, they will protect and they will keep it. And this is the message of the Ministry of Antiquities and Tourism, is to increase awareness of the Egyptians, especially young generation, uh, about their civilization, to learn more and more, because if they know, they will appreciate. If they don't know, they don't care. Sometimes we see people, they are touching artifacts, and they are not caring about these antiquities and keeping them in a good condition. So, because they don't know. So, this is the reason that to learn them is to let them able to know more and to appreciate and to keep the antiquities and civilization.
Yes. Dr. Halwagi, if we talk about knowledge, then part of the knowledge is to put away the misconceptions. Are there misconceptions about our history? And if so, what are the main points of these misconceptions?
This is a very interesting point because there is a misconception, uh, a lot of conceptions in ancient Egyptian civilization. For example, the first, which I don't like, is to say, to tell people pharaonic civilization. Pharaoh is a king. The word Pharaoh, it comes from the ancient Egyptian language, Bir'a, which driven to be Pharaoh, is referring to a king who sits on the throne, who lives in the royal palace. And the term Pharaoh uh, emerged in the new kingdom when Egypt became a great empire all over the world. So the word Pharaoh is only referring to a one person. So I prefer to say ancient Egyptian civilization because the Egyptians who built the civilization, who carried stones, heavy stones, who exerted their utmost, who loved the country and the land, who built this civilization. So it is it's better to give this privilege to the people who build the civilization,
Absolutely.
not for the person who is sitting on a throne in living in a great palace. So, by the way, the word Pharaoh was directed to the Egyptian civilization by the foreign archaeologists. So I always uh, teach my students to talk about the Egyptian civilization, talk about the citizen, the person who built this civilization, not for the one who was just ruling a country. Even he is not ruling the country because there is a government and there is an army, there is a political form of of a state since the early beginning, 3200 BC, when was the unification of
Mina?
Upper and Lower Egypt declared. This was the beginning of the first political unification of the whole history. I would like to
Yeah.
refer to Mina.
Yeah.
This is another misconception
Wow.
because the king who fulfilled or achieved the unification was called Narmer or Narmer. It was well known by mistake Mini or Mina.
Mm.
Mina is not a name of a king.
Uh-huh.
Mina was an epithet to describe the person who achieved such unification
Okay.
because he controlled the country, unified Egypt, and made the first unification and the first central government.
In the world.
Yes.
Mm.
So this one of the
Okay.
misconceptions,
Yeah.
as well as when some people says hieroglyphic language, which is completely wrong. Hieroglyphs is an inscription. It's not a language. So it's called ancient Egyptian language, written by different scripts. Hieroglyphs means holy inscription. And there is another inscription.
So would the ancient Egyptian language be the Coptic language? Or is that different?
I will let you
Okay.
know.
Okay.
So hieroglyphs is a holy inscription. This only for the temples, for tombs, for high official, for palaces. But for the priests, they used another inscription. It's called hieratic, which is inscription used by priests in the temples and in dealing between priests themselves. Uh, but for the public, the normal Egyptian, they used a demotic inscription, which means the public inscription. The difference between hieroglyphs that you see in the temples, like figures, like birds, like animals, like other things, but other inscription is abbreviated from these figures. So you cannot see the real figure, you see abbreviation. So, and Coptic, it is not a language, it is an Egyptian language written during the Coptic era, Byzantine era, when Christianity was religion of the Roman Empire and led the Egyptian to practice their religion, because before that the Egyptian were not allowed to practice their new religion, so they escaped to the desert because the Roman soldiers used to capture and torture the Egyptian and kill the Egyptian because they believed in Christianity, when the Roman still not yet believed in Christianity.
Clear.
See, these some examples of the misconceptions of about the ancient Egyptian civilization.
Very important.
Dr. Mahmoud, who participates in this initiative, which is We Narrate Our History?
As I told you at the beginning, it is an initiative launched by young generation, directed to the young generation. This initiative, the the general coordinator of this initiative, is a young, promising archaeologist. His name is Islam Zaghloul. He was expected to be with us today, but for some reason he is in Alexandria today. So he is loving a person to his homeland, to his history. He was the one who named the initiative Let's Narrate Our History, assisted by young assistants, a young generation, recently graduated from Faculty of Archaeology and Faculty of Tourism. So they used to announce at social media like Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram about some visit to sites or to museums, and they collect some young generation, young students, and they take them in to the field to teach them and to learn them about ancient Egypt. They take them to the Egyptian Museum, to pyramids, to Saqqara, to Old Cairo churches and Coptic Museum, not only in Cairo but also outside of Cairo. And they do this by themselves, financed by themselves, because they love what they do. They love Egypt, they love ancient Egyptian civilization, and that's why they have a vision and they have a message, is to reach this knowledge to the young and new generation. I think they are doing a great success in this field.
Dr. Al-Halwagy, as the world celebrated in May International Museum Day, and we've seen a lot of care here in Egypt to museums recently, even inaugurating new museums, building new museums, having new ideas for museums, renovating older museums. What is it that you like the most about these activities?
Okay, let's first talk about 18th of May, the World International Day of Museums, which is your birthday. Congratulations.
It's a birthday for you, Dr. Halwagy,
Of
because you,
course,
I
it's
mean,
a specific,
yeah,
famous
especially for
day,
you,
right?
because a man who's,
For
museums was a major part of his life, and you were the head of the
Egyptian.
iconic Tahrir Museum. I mean, the Egyptian museum for years. So, yeah.
In 1977, UNESCO declared the day of 18th of May as a day, International Day for Museum, to encourage governments all over the world to take care about museums and to build the new museums. And so this was the beginning day of the what's so called International Council of Museum, well known as ICOM.
Mm.
So this was the day for this council. So since that day,
A UNESCO initiative in 1977.
right.
Yeah.
So since that day, they are caring about museums, and they give some help, some assistance, technically and not financially, to most of museums, and they teach and they train museum staff all over the world, and they make some training courses internationally, which is nice, which is good. And your question was,
Yes, I mean, what is it that you like the most,
uh,
especially the airport museums? I mean, that's a great idea. I mean, but you say, of course,
uh,
not me. So
I would
the
like,
Cairo International Airport
yeah,
Museum and others.
I would like to say, to tell you that Egypt was almost the only country celebrated, not celebrated, launched the inauguration of a new, not only one museum, two museums inside Cairo International Airport, one in Terminal 3 and one in Terminal 2. There was previously an museum at the airport, Terminal 1, but it was a very little narrow room, which is not يعني suitable for Egypt, not suitable for the ancient Egyptian civilization. But this was available. So therefore, the Ministry of Antiquities and Tourism started to, with cooperation with the Cairo International Airport, to find a new place for to serve the traveling passengers and transit passengers, to let them who are having some leisure time, free time, to have some idea about ancient Egyptian civilization, and to represent Egypt in front of these passengers. So it was a good opportunity to celebrate the International Day of Museum in Egypt by celebrating inauguration the two museums in Terminal 2 and Terminal 3. This is the most important activities celebrated during 18th of May this year, especially with the circumstances which we are passing
Of
by,
course.
which is the
The
pandemic of
pandemic, of course.
COVID
COVID-19.
19.
Okay. Dr. Mahmoud Halwagy, former director of the Egyptian Museum, of course, a group of youth which launched a campaign to raise awareness about the history of ancient Egypt and the great value of its monuments under the auspices of yourself, sir. We thank you so much for joining us in today's episode of Nile Cruise. Thank you so much for your informative knowledge. Of course, on the International Day of the Museums, which is the 18th of May, which you celebrate this very special day. We thank you so much for joining us, sir. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you very much for giving us our time, Muhammad.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, Dr. Halwagi. Always a pleasure to have you with us.
It's my
Thank you
pleasure
so much.
also to meet you
Thank you.
again. And thank you.
Dear viewers, Rana and I will be back here on Nile Cruise. Please don't go away.